enthusiasm. My goodness alive. Read something the other day you're going to be enormously intrigued with. Read where every third person was either remarkably handsome or amazingly beautiful. Now, what I'd like to get you to do is look directly at the person on your left. No, left. Now look directly at the person on your right. And if it ain't either one of them, well, that ought to get us off to a good start here. Just as a matter of curiosity, how many of you have ever either heard me speak before or else this is your first time? Can I see your hands? Okay. Hey, we're with it here tonight. That's great. The name Howard Hill will probably ring a bell in the minds of some of you, but not all of you. Howard Hill was a good Alabama boy. He was an archer. Many people said he was the greatest of all time. He entered 287 archery tournaments. He placed first 287 times. As a youngster, I've seen newsreels of Howard Hill. I've seen him where they were filming him killing a Cape buffalo, the toughest of all game animals to bring down with a bow and arrow. He killed a bull elephant. He killed a large shark under about 15 feet of water. As a youngster, I've seen newsreels where from 50 feet he would shoot at a bullseye and split it precisely in the center. And then he would take his second arrow, and with the second arrow, he would split the first one. An amazing demonstration of skill. Now, I have never shot the bow and arrow professionally, but I am an instructor par excellence. I think that's French, which means I'm really good. But I'm not absolutely certain of that. As a matter of fact, I am so good as an instructor of archery that I could spend 20 minutes with any man or woman in this audience this evening, and provided your eyesight is normal and your health is good, at the end of 20 minutes, I would have you hitting the bullseye more consistently than Howard Hill could have hit it the best day of his life. Provided we had, of course, first blindfolded Howard Hill. And then turn him around a couple of times so he would have no idea in which direction he was facing. And you kind of snicker and you say, well, Ziglar, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. Why, of course we could shoot better than him, because how in the world could a man hit a target he could not even see? That's a pretty good question. Here's one even better. How can you hit a target you don't even have? The question, my friends, is, do you have your targets? Have you clearly identified what it is that you want in life? Have you set a date as to when you expect to get it? Have you identified the obstacles you must overcome in order to get there? Have you identified the people, the groups, the organizations you need to work with in order to get there? Have you spelled out what it is you need to know to reach your objective? Have you developed a plan of action, and have you written it down as to what's in it for me? Why do you want to reach the goal in the first place? You see, the problem with most people is they're what we call a wandering generality in life. But the truth is, you can never achieve greatness unless you become a meaningful specific. You see, the basic problem is most people, when they're working on their job, they get to thinking, you know, I really ought to be spending time at home with my family. And then when they're at home with their family, they get to thinking, you really ought to be out there working for my family. And so when they're out there working for their family, their mind is back home. And when they're back home, their mind is back out there in the field. And then they tell everybody, well, I don't ever have time to do anything. No wonder you're always traveling. You see, the basic problem is not lack of time, it is lack of direction. We all have exactly the same amount of time, whether we're a millionaire or a pauper. All of us have 24 hours every single day. The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, we must have goals if we're going to do anything. Goals do a lot of things. For example, they enable you to chase the blues away. I've never known anybody who was truly depressed who had specific and long-range goals. And what goals do is they create activity. And you see, activity, as you work towards reaching them, creates the very excitement which you need in order to accomplish or reach your objectives. The psychologists put it this way: logic will not change an emotion, but action will. And as you get busy working towards these dreams of yours, and yes, you absolutely must have your dreams, ladies and gentlemen, and what we're going to do is look at the ways you build a foundation underneath those dreams. Several years ago, they did an experiment with a number of college students. And in this particular experiment, they let them go to sleep, and they hooked these brain machines up to them. With these brain machines, they could determine precisely within a matter of seconds when the student went to sleep. Then they could tell when that student started to dream. And as the student would start to dream, they would awaken him or her. And then they'd let them go back to sleep, and that is no problem. But when they started to dream, they would awaken them again. And with those brainwave machines, they can tell exactly when they start to dream. At the end of one night of this kind of treatment, many of the students were nervous and fidgety. At the end of 2 nights of this kind of treatment, where they had a reasonable amount of sleep but no dreaming, they became very irritable and very short and very cross. At the end of just 3 nights of a reasonable amount of sleep but no dreaming, they could tell that some of them were headed for some psychological difficulties. And so what they did was they aborted the experiment. Now, about 24 hours later, most of the students were back to normal. Within a week, all of them had returned 100%. But the experiment proved something very conclusively, and that's this: when you're asleep, ladies and gentlemen, you need your dreams. I'm here to tell you that when you're wide awake, you also need your dreams. You must have your goals. You'll never make it as a wandering generality. You must become a meaningful specific. If you're going to work tomorrow because that's what you did yesterday, you're not going to be as good tomorrow as you were yesterday, because now you're 2 days older and no closer to the goal which you do not have. You can't make it as a wandering generality. Most people understand you got to become a meaningful specific. It reminds me of an experiment done some little while ago by Jean-Henri Fabre, the great French naturalist. He took a number of processionary caterpillars, so named because they follow each other in a procession, and he lined them around a flower pot until they formed a never-ending circle. And they started going round and round 24 hours that first day, and then they went the next day and the next, and by about the 3rd or the 4th day, he put some pine needles into the center of that flower pot. That's the food of the processionary caterpillar. They kept going round and round, 7 full days and 7 full nights. They went round and round until they literally dropped dead from starvation and exhaustion. With an abundance of food less than 6 inches away, they had starved to death because they confused activity with accomplishment. You've got some friends that are in the same shape. They're busy all the time. They're going, and they're here and they're there and they're somewhere else. But they never really accomplish anything because they don't have those specific, clearly identifiable objectives. You gotta have those goals. Now that you know why it's important to have goals, take the next few minutes to prepare a dream sheet. Write down everything you've ever wanted to do or be or have. Now, don't be judgmental. Let your mind run free. Here's a guide to help organize this dream sheet. As you write down one idea, it will trigger others. No matter how far-fetched or seemingly unrealistic, be sure to write down everything. Begin with travel and vacations, where you want to go and how you're going to get there, your automobile, the kind, the color, all of the options, the house, the size of it, the style, and all of the extras, the money, savings, investments, your career, the salary, the increase, the raises and all the benefits which go with it, your promotions, the children and your family, the education, activities, the shared time, friendship, the respect, the helping of others, your health, your body weight, the exercise, your religion, your church involvement, your religious study, and your mind, education, reading, recall. Now, if other things come to mind, you add them to your list. Take your time to complete this list, and when you're finished, set it aside for 24 to 48 hours. At that point, get out your dream sheet again, and after each item, write why. Now, this is crucial. If you cannot clearly articulate in one sentence why you want to be, do, or have what you included on your list, it is not something you're serious about. So take it off. We'll get back to this later. Yet the truth of the matter is, 97% of the people in our great land never really set their goals in the proper light in the way that you're going to be taught during the course of this program. 97%. And one of the major reasons is because of a little thing called fear. Now, you spell fear, obviously, F-E-A-R. And that really is an acrostic for false evidence appearing real. But if it appears real, ladies and gentlemen, it's real. For example, I could take this handkerchief and my finger and rob the bank in your town in all probability. All I'd have to do is put the handkerchief over my face, put my finger in my pocket, and walk up to the teller and in my meanest voice say, "Give me your money." And chances are superb that they would give me the money. The evidence would be false, but it would appear real, and because of that, they would give me the money. A young Cuban hijacked an airplane to Cuba with a bar of soap. He took it to the captain of the aircraft and he said, "Let's go to Cuba. I've got a bomb in here." Though the evidence was false, it appeared real, and they went to Cuba. You see, the truth of the matter is a lot of people collect a great deal of false evidence, and the net result is they never set the goals. Now, let me assure you, there's a certain amount of danger in setting goals. For example, next Monday morning, I get on an aircraft in Dallas, Texas, going into Atlanta, Georgia at 8:45. Now, I've got sense enough to know that when I get on that airplane, there's a certain amount of danger when I get aboard that aircraft, because some airplanes are coming down faster than they go up. And I'll tell you, when those airplanes come down faster than they go up, there's danger for me, but there's more danger for the airplane. You see, when an airplane comes down faster than it goes up, you just about can't hardly trade those dudes in at any price. I mean, their market value is gone. See, there's danger for the airplane, but there's more danger for the airplane if it stays on the ground. Did you realize that according to the engineers, an airplane will wear out faster sitting on the ground than it will wear out flying in the heavens? It'll rust out on the ground. It'll wear out in the heavens. Not nearly as fast in the air as it'll rust out on the ground. And besides, airplanes are built to fly. You get on a ship, there's danger it might sink. But there's more danger for the ship if it stays at anchor in the harbor. Experts tell me that it will collect barnacles and become unseaworthy faster in the harbor than it will if it sails the high seas. And besides, that's what ships are built for. Now, there's a certain amount of danger in setting your goals, because, you see, you might not reach those goals. But folks, there's danger if you don't set the goals. You see, man and nature are 180 degrees apart. We use up nature's natural resources by using them up. But we use up man's natural resources by not using them at all. Oliver Wendell Holmes expressed it very eloquently when he said, "The tragedy in America is truly that we waste our natural resources. But one of infinitely greater tragedy is the fact that we waste our human resources by not using what we've got." And the average person goes to their grave with their music still in them. What a shame. You got to have goals, ladies and gentlemen. I want to talk a little bit about goals on the line of how do you lose 37 pounds and write a book. I'm just going to kind of give you that as an example. For 24 years of my adult life, by choice, I weighed well over 200 pounds. I say by choice because, you see, I have never accidentally eaten anything. I mean, it's always been deliberate. And when I choose to eat too much today, I have chosen to weigh too much tomorrow. You can choose to set goals and realize your potential, or you can choose not to set them. Now, if you choose not to set them, you got to understand that the consequences are not going to be good down the road. For 24 years, I was going to lose that weight. As a matter of fact, in 24 years, I lost several thousand pounds of weight. How many of you already know exactly what I'm talking about? But it wasn't until I wrote it down, put a date on it, listed the obstacles I had to overcome, identified the people, the groups, the organizations I needed to work with, spelled out a plan of action, set that time limit in there, and identified all of the benefits to me. It was only when I did that that the goal became a reality, and I lost the weight. For 10 or 15 years, I was going to write a book. You know anybody who's going to do just a whole lot of things, folks? I was going to write a book. But it wasn't until I got busy writing the book and writing the plans first before the book ever materialized. Yale University in 1953 did a study of their graduating seniors. They discovered that only 3% of them had taken all 7 of the steps you need to take in setting your goals. Another 10% had taken part of the steps, but the majority, 87%, beyond graduating from college and becoming a professor or a preacher or a doctor or whatever, very few of the other 87% had taken any of the steps in setting those goals. Now, in 1973, 20 years later, they did another study of these graduating seniors. And in the area which you can measure, which is in your career and in your finances, the 3% who had taken all 7 steps, that is, they had written down, clearly identified exactly what they wanted. They had put the date on when they expected to get there. They had identified the obstacles they had to overcome. They had spelled out the people, the groups, the organizations they had to work with. They had identified what they needed to know. They had developed a plan of action and they had written it down. Why do I want to get there? These 3% had accomplished more than the 97% combined who had not set those goals. Now, if it sounds like I'm trying to sell you on having goals, how many of you are getting close already? How many of you are becoming convinced right quick like that you need to have those goals? There's no question about it. The immortal J.C. Penney many, many years ago said, "Give me a stock clerk with a goal, and I'll give you a man who will make history. But give me a man without a goal, and I'll give you a stock clerk